This episode is brought to you by Starry. When you drink Starry Lemon Lime Soda, every sip is a win. Perfect for game time or anytime. It's a crisp, refreshing lemon lime soda that's caffeine-free and bursting with flavor that makes you go, ah. Starry hits different. Find it in stores or online today.
Oh, muy, I love yours. Mr. Your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
And hello, welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave, and I'm one of the two hosts of this comfy podcast.
And I'm Rich, and I'm the other host of this comfy podcast. Think of me as Ed to Dave's Sean. I love killing zombies, and he's got red on him.
I thought it was going to be something about being ginger, but fair enough.
You've got a red t-shirt on.
Oh yeah, that's true. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, their worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we quite often drift off and talk about other things, not just movies, sometimes life in general.
We also do drop big fat spoilers for movies that we mention on this podcast. Most of them are old films, but sometimes new ones do creep in. So if we mention a film you don't want to be spoiled, then just press pause, stop, flick forward a little bit, go sharpen your knives, you know they need doing, and then come back, and it'll be fine. Because on today's episode, we are joined by Sam Clements.
Sam is a brilliant podcaster. He's the host of one of our favourite podcasts, 90-Minute Film Fest, or 90-Minute or Less Film Fest, I should say, where, if you've not heard of it, the clue is in the title. They talk about lots of films that are less than 90 minutes, which me and Dave really love.
Love that. Love it.
He has some brilliant guests, and it's just a great listen. So do make sure you go and have a listen to that.
Yeah, because we're very excited to sit down with Sam and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Sam Clements' Unequal Sequels. Enjoy.
First question up, just to get the mind ticking over. What was the sequel that you got excited about when you were little?
A sequel I got excited about when I was little. I think when I was little, I just used to like going to the cinema to watch everything. But the first sequel I was aware of, because it was a big issue, was buying Batman Returns on VHS in Asda. And I had to get my mum to buy it because the film had a naughty rating. It might have been a 12 or a 15 at the time. And my mum was like torn. She was like, well, it is Batman. So that's a kid's thing, but it is a red circle on the certificate, you know, and I definitely wasn't 12 or 15. And I think she was just like, are you sure it's okay? And I was like, yes, Mum, definitely fine. And then we watched it later that evening, and there's a scene where the Penguin, played by Danny DeVito, bites off a man's nose. And I think my mum realised she'd been conned. But I remember having to like properly sell it into her, like, yeah, it's Batman, it's just Batman. You know, don't worry, just Batmaning, sort of stuff, you know, and just trying to like make sure she didn't ask too many questions about that sort of 15 or sort of high search on that film.
Did you tell her there's a toy range? That used to be my way around it. Like, there's toys of it, Mum.
There's toys. If there's toys, it's fine.
They wouldn't release something to
kids
about toys, would they?
I lent heavily on the fact that it was a cartoon series, a really good Batman animated series that was on Saturday mornings in the 90s, and I was watching that, and I think she was aware that was a thing. So I was like, it's just based a cartoon, yes, based on the cartoon. So I didn't really know what I was talking about, but I knew I wanted to see a new Batman film, and I think it was just an impulse buy. I was in Asda in what used to be the sort of physical media section that supermarkets no longer have. And I was like, well, I want to buy something. I think I'll buy Batman. It doesn't matter the certificate. And that's happened a few times. I remember when like some Tarantino films came out, I think I was a bit too young to watch Kill Bill and I had to convince my dad to buy Kill Bill on DVD for me. And he was like, are you sure this is okay? I was like, yeah, it's all right. It's yellow. Look at that nice yellow cover. Don't worry about it. And my dad got really into it because he came home with Kill Bill and that Tom Cruise film. Is it The Last Samurai?
Yeah.
Which I didn't ask for. But I think he was like, you like things with swords in. Have a Tom Cruise sword flick. So that was a little bonus. So yeah, I've had to do that a couple of times because I was sort of into films early on, and it's their fault because they used to record films on VHS, like that were on TV.
Yeah.
And some of the first films I watched were all sequels, things like Terminator 2 and Aliens and Alien 3, before seeing the originals of either of those. Those films my dad recorded, and it was like if my dad recorded it was sort of fine to watch. So they set me up to these, sort of more grown-up, gory films.
I think if you watch Terminator 2, you can watch Batman Returns.
Yeah, definitely.
But we didn't have to buy. We didn't get. There was no scrutiny on that one. There wasn't a shop assistant going, this is maybe a 15. It was on telly.
It didn't do that so much back then. There wasn't that. It seemed to be when we were kids. There wasn't like nobody was really hot on like checking if you were 15 before you bought a 15 or rented a 15 or anything. Like I remember I rented like Pulp Fiction when I was about 13.
Huh?
Like I got home and sat down, and my little brother's like, I want to watch it. And I was like, no, you're 9. You can't watch Pulp Fiction.
I think because everybody who worked in those shops was sort of like friends from school, or like maybe they were a couple of years above, at least for me anyway, but local Blockbuster Video was all just run by people who I sort of recognised at school. And I think there was a very, they were 16 years old. They're not going to ask for ID, are they?
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember having a problem when it used to go to the cinema, people IDing me either. You quite often get into films, maybe 12 to 15s, maybe not the 18s, they'll push a bit more, but I remember going to see a lot of 15s when I wasn't 15, like between 12 and 13. So the cinema was a big thing for you when you were young, Sam, was it?
Yeah, just as a fun thing, I used to love watching films. I'd love watching any sort of telly, and used to watch a lot of films at home. And then when we were, sort of old enough to go, maybe I think my first film was maybe when I was 6. It was either the Flintstones movie or Jurassic Park. I can't remember which order they came out.
That's quite a difference.
They're both about dinosaurs. So it was one or the other. And once we sort of started to go, that became a regular thing. When my dad realised, I think, like actually there are some films that a 6-year-old might sit through. We'll sort of go for it. So yeah, it was like almost every weekend we'd go, and see films of varying qualities. The 90s was a golden era in some respects, but the family movies of the 90s were mostly forgettable. So yeah, I used to, and I just loved it then. And it was always to the same cinema as well. It was always our Showcase in Avonmeads, Bristol, which is a real 90s multiplex. And it's still open today. If you go there, it is still the 90s. They haven't updated it at all. So I do, it's kind of nice. I can literally revisit my childhood cinema, which is not possible for everyone because so many cinemas have closed down. But that was the bug, and then I just got obsessed with films from a young age.
Yeah, my childhood cinema has been knocked down and turned into a care home. And our favourite cinema in Cheltenham's gone, Dave, hasn't it?
What, the Odeon?
Yeah.
It was that was a weird cinema because the seats were all so close to the screen, and it was like set out like a theatre. That's what I remember about that one. And there was no legroom for big people.
No, definitely not.
We had a mate that was 6'8", and he had to book the same seat every time because it was like a curve, and there was just a little bit more legroom for him. I did want to ask, so your mum, you took some talking to get Batman Returns.
Yes.
And then Batman Forever comes out. How old are you at that point, and did you have to convince your mum that is a family-friendly film? And there's no darkness in that.
That's a good question. I remember seeing those films because I didn't like them very much, and I remember seeing them because there was lots of toy tie-ins. I think there were like toys in like cereal pop boxes, and maybe Walker's Crisps did a promo. I do sort of remember collecting something to do with the new George Clooney and Val Kilmer Batmans. So I think maybe because the age bracket had really jumped down with those films, like that was just a no-brainer, and my dad probably wanted to watch a Batman film. My mum never came to the cinema with us. It was always with my dad though, and only really in like later life have I gone to the cinema with my mum. Not very many times, but I took her to see A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga. We had a nice time.
Yeah.
Sort of a sequel or a reboot. Not sure if that qualifies. So like I've got her into the cinema. I think as it's become my profession, working for a cinema company. My mum's a bit more interested in it now. It's less frivolous.
Is your cinema habits the same now than they were when you were a kid, like sweets and the way you approach it, and like I got to get there before the trailer kind of thing, or are you now, because you work around cinemas, you get there just before the screening starts?
It depends. It really depends. It depends on the film. And if it's like a proper night out of like escapist fun, I like to get there in time to watch the trailers. I like to buy maybe some booze, because you can do that now, and if it's an evening screening, and maybe an ice cream. I'm not a big popcorn fan, which is probably controversial for someone who works for a cinema company, and a significant amount of revenue is probably raised by selling popcorn. I used to be an usher, and I cleaned up so much popcorn. I was like, no, never again. I'm not going to put any cinema ushers through this. It's the hardest thing to clean. It's so light and so sticky, and you do not get the tools, really. You get like a dustpan and brush, and you know what's not designed to be picked up by a dustpan and brush? Popcorn. So yeah, less of that. But I do love going to the cinema. I go a lot. If I go to my dream showtime is a weekend matinee. Love a weekend matinee. A nice empty-ish cinema, maybe. Maybe I'll have a coffee. Maybe I'll sneak in a croissant from the Sainsbury's bakery along the way, and yeah, that's just such a joyous time to go. But I also, if it's a big silly film or a highly anticipated film, I love going on a Friday night when it's really busy. I saw Avengers Endgame as a sold-out Friday night screening, and it was great. That was like the real fans were there, and they really added to the enjoyment of that film. So I don't know. I guess it depends on the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being an usher, I can imagine that you see the end of lots of films that you don't want to see the ends of before you see the rest of the film.
I definitely do that. I used to be a projectionist. So my sort of potted cinema history is I was an usher for a few years, and then I moved into the projection booth when cinemas had projectionists, for every single screening, and I saw the end of every film for a 2 to 3 year period, but obviously the films that played a lot during that time, I was a projectionist when Slumdog Millionaire was out, and that film just played and played and played. I think the cinema I worked at played it for about 4 months. So 4 months of seeing the end of Slumdog Millionaire and the beginning. You're always there for the beginning, always there for the end. So there's certain films, they're not always the best films, but there's just certain films that you can't help but forget, no matter how hard you try. And yeah, I sort of love that though. It's just sort of like the random, that's because the audience liked that film. So, it wasn't like we had a megalomaniac running the building who was just obsessed with Danny Boyle. The film did well and people kept wanting to see it. And it was really nice seeing a first-time audience come in, 3 to 4 months after the film opened. And we saw it this year as well. We're still playing Top Gun and Elvis, which opened before the summer. and I love that, first, it takes a while sometimes to find the time to go to the movies. And I do love that people are still coming out for them.
We've got a friend, James, who used to be a projectionist, and he still says it's the best job he ever had.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He loved that job. And then digital stuff came in and ruined it.
Yes, yeah, it got less exciting when it was digital. It was really it was quite spicy when digital had just come in though, because the projectors kept breaking. So the reliable projector was the 35mm, and you're like, okay, we could try our luck, and we'll put the digital one on and just see what happens. And like a new computer, we had all sorts of issues. The subtitles are in the wrong language, or the picture's upside down, and you just had to keep turning them off and on again because they're basically like a big computer, those ones. Whereas like the 35mm is a machine you operate and you control its destiny. There's fewer curveballs. But for a while we were running digital and 35mm side by side. So if the digital broke down, we could seamlessly just switch over to the other projector and the audience won't really miss a beat. And we did that with Wolf Street 2.
That's amazing.
Wolf Street 2, Money Never Sleeps, and Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Those people in that screen would have been asleep anyway. They wouldn't have noticed. That's a proper dull sequel, that one.
Yeah, really forgotten film as well. But not for me, because I remember running 2 copies of that for every screening for 2 weeks.
Do you think that films don't get enough time in the cinema nowadays?
Not
limited time.
It depends, doesn't it? Because we've just seen the summer, Top Gun and Elvis have had the rule of the roost because no films really opened over summer. Summer 2022 is a real anomaly. So normally I would agree with you, but I think this year actually we could have done with a few more films because we're, our top grossing film where I work anyway is still sort of Elvis and Top Gun. And, the audiences are still coming out for that, but I wish they would come out for something new. And other things in the list are like Nope and Bullet Train at the time of recording this, both of which have been open for over a month, and we're just not seeing new films come through. I think it is picking up now, which is good, but before the pandemic we would have the other problem, like you were saying, we'd have 10 to 15 films open a week and films really wouldn't get enough time in the cinema. So there probably is a happy medium. I do think it's unfair to open so many films against each other because you split the audience. but distributors are very bullish.
Yeah, we've really struggled with films to review over August and September because they're just not coming out. We're just like,
especially
in a very
sequels.
dry patch. Yeah, sequels especially.
Yeah, well, one of the best sequels of the summer went straight to streaming as well, like Prey, and we could have done with Prey in the cinemas. It's such a cinematic film, and I think at that time there were no big movies out. Like, they would have had a really good run for at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Got great reviews. I think audiences would prefer to see that type of film on a big screen. But, whatever, the weird machinations of how films are greenlit these days and what goes to streaming and what goes to cinemas, it's a dark art, I think.
Yeah, we've said about Prey that it needed a cinematic release.
It would have looked good on the big
It
screen.
would have looked fairly good, yeah. Yeah, it's a shame.
What is your best sequel ever, Sam?
I toiled with this one. And I think I mentioned Terminator 2 originally, which I think you guys have covered a lot. So I pivoted away from Terminator 2. But that was one of those films that my dad recorded, and I saw on VHS before I'd seen the original, which was weird. And when I saw the original, I was like, why is he bad? What? But the film I've chosen is Wallace and Gromit: The Wrong Trousers, which I think is not only one of the greatest sequels ever made, one of the greatest films ever made.
Brilliant choice. We have briefly talked about this we did a best animated sequels episode, and this came up. So I'm excited to talk about it. I've been waiting for a guest to pick it.
Yeah. And I can't believe, looking back, it came out in 93, is that right? Or was it 95?
No, it was early 90s. The first one.
Yeah,
I thought it was much later than this, but yeah, I was obsessed by Wallace and Gromit when it came out. Reminds me of my nan, weirdly. Why do you love it so much? Where were you in your life? I guess you're even younger than me.
I was probably 6 years old. I think it came out at Christmas. I remember watching this at Christmas, whether that was the premiere on TV or not. So this was a film that was released originally on the BBC. The BBC had co-produced it with Aardman. So a TV movie. Again, I don't know if that's breaking the rules of the pod. It didn't get a cinema release, but it did win an Oscar. Aardman had got good clout with the awards bodies, and they'd already had some heat from the previous Wallace and Gromit film, A Grand Day Out. So, and I hadn't seen, a bit like Terminator 2 and Batman Returns, I hadn't seen A Grand Day Out before seeing this. This was my first film. So I watched Wallace and Gromit: The Wrong Trousers, and then when I saw Grand Day Out, which was made in the 80s, and it was a really long, protracted production on that film, and Nick Park, the director, made it as a student film, and so the budgets aren't the same, and it looks a little bit, it's still beautiful, it looks a bit ropey when compared to The Wrong Trousers. The proportions are a bit weird, so it does look like, what's gone wrong with Wallace and Gromit in A Grand Day Out, and the characters are a bit, they're not fully defined in A Grand Day Out, whereas in The Wrong Trousers they really set up who Wallace and Gromit are for all future adventures. I think I don't know, Wallace is, it's just really different in A Grand Day Out than what he is in Wrong Trousers. But that's the joy of a sequel, you get to develop the characters. So yeah, I just remember it being magical, that this amazing plasticine animation was unlike anything I'd seen at that point. I guess kids' films for me were hand-drawn animations. It was before CGI probably when I was watching a lot of my kids' films. But to see this 3D moving sort of model, it just felt like magic. And I think at the time there was probably a lot of talk about how they made it, and sort of just that fascination with the models, and they're basically toys that they've brought to life. So all of that stuff. And I grew up in Bristol, which is the home of Aardman, the studio who made this film, and I think oh wow, stuff's made in the town I live in, it's not all made in Hollywood or London or whatever. That was quite exciting as well. And I could see the Aardman building from really, it was on my way into town. It's a 10-minute walk away from my parents' house. So it was sort of nice. I know exactly where that is.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. I completely agree with you. I think it's an amazing film, and the fact that it basically has one actor. I think obviously all the the animated characters have personality, but there's only one voice actor in it. There's only Peter Sallis, isn't there? There's Wallace, and then nobody. How Gromit can have such an impact without saying a word. It's brilliant. It's really well done. The
most expressive eyebrows in cinema, I think.
Yeah,
it's magic.
I love the fact that you can see people's fingerprints in them, and in the it really kind of makes it more real. I love it.
No, definitely.
It's a great choice.
I don't know if they're not forgotten, these films, but because they were made for TV movies, they're not sort of in the same bracket, I guess, as a lot of other films. Like, you don't, and because it's a short film as well, it's only 20 minutes long. Sometimes short films that are like shorts, they don't get the same sort of preservation or prestige or sort of half-life that a feature film does. Like, even like browsing a video store, there's very few short films available to buy, and with the Wallace and Gromit films, they're all collected onto one disc. There's 3 or 4 short films now, but it isn't like you can go and pick up a copy of The Wrong Trousers easily in terms of like a physical media thing, and very rarely screened at the cinema. But probably more people have seen it because it had that prime time, Christmas Eve or whatever slot on the BBC at a time where there were no streaming channels, and we were watching 4 channels at home. And it was
a big deal.
Respectable to sit down and watch a plasticine dog for 20 minutes, whether you were a grown up or a kid.
Yeah.
It's still part of our Christmas now in my family. We always watch Wallace and Gromit at Christmas.
Yeah, and none of the films are Christmassy, but they feel Christmassy.
No. They do, yeah.
It also does the magic thing that a lot of films nowadays can't do, that it has a beginning, middle and end in like 20 minutes. And the way it develops, like you said, develops characters just through looks. Like the penguin, just through like the black eyes, is so evil. I remember the first time I watched this, I couldn't understand how they did it. Like, I think at this point when I was young, the only animation I've seen like that was maybe Morph, which was Aardman as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Tony
definitely.
Hart.
Yeah.
So when this was just magic. When this came out, I was like, I can't believe this is how long did this take? And they're like, years.
Yeah, longer than most feature films.
Why? Yeah, why isn't it longer? And they're like, because it would take it even longer.
Yeah, it's you're right. I mean, I think Aardman are amazing screenwriters, and they probably don't get as much credit because the visuals you're obviously drawn to the plasticine models and the stop motion animation that they use, but because that process takes so long, they have to get it perfect on paper, and they do extensive rewrites and screenwriting and storyboards and that's the safe space before you commit to years and years and years of moving a plasticine man's hand around or whatever. So I think animation in general probably doesn't get the credit it deserves for its writing, but Aardman, they take it so seriously, and that's why the films last, I think.
Yeah.
It does feel like ages. It does feel like this came out last year, and it still looks amazing. Like you said, Grand Day Out does look a bit tired now, but watching this back, and then I watched a close shave afterwards. They're all on the BBC iPlayer, by the way. I was like, I love these. Is there a scene in Wrong Trousers that you love the most, or a character?
I think the famous scene is the train sequence, which is towards the end. Gromit is having to sort of literally build the tracks on a model railway as the train is moving, and it's this whole sort of weird sort of heist. I think that's amazing. But there's some really like subtle scenes which are beautiful as well. There's a scene where they have to pay the rent. I'm never really sure of Wallace and Gromit's sort of living or financial situation. I think he is professionally an inventor, but we don't really get a sense of how successful I guess not very, because he has to take a lodger in The Wrong Trousers, and the lodger is Feathers McGraw, which is a notorious criminal mastermind who Wallace is oblivious to, and Gromit, the smart one in the pair, cottons on that Feathers might be a wrong un, but Feathers manages to sort of charm Wallace enough to kick Gromit out, and Gromit has to go and stay in his little dog kennel outside, and it's raining, and
cleverly disguises himself as a chicken.
Oh yeah, he puts a rubber glove to turn the penguin into the chicken. It's a beautiful disguise.
Oh, it's you.
So I just think that scene where Gromit gets kicked out and has to live in the dog kennel is really, it's quite emotional. I remember when I was a child thinking like, this is a sad film. It's raining and the music was playing, but there's also this amazing heist scene where Wallace is asleep, and for some reason he builds these robot trousers, and
I always wondered this: did he build them, or did he buy them? Because they turned up in the post.
Oh, that's a good point.
Weird, isn't
that's
it?
a good point. Because he is like,
I always wondered if it was his invention, or did he see it in like one of his invention magazines and buy it.
That's true. We should interrogate the origins of the titular trousers. because he seems to sort of buy them thinking it'll be good to walk the dog. And Gromit isn't best pleased by this. But Feathers McGraw works out that the trousers are also great for a diamond heist. And sort of an unconscious Wallace, commits to diamond heist in these robot remote control trousers. I think that scene's incredible because there's lots of effects going on. Wallace is climbing up the side of a building, breaking in. He's like cutting glass. He's moving around lasers, and all of this is rendered in plasticine or miniature models, and it's just beautiful. There's a really lovely claw that comes out of the wrong trousers to grab this diamond, and it's like one of those grabber machines you see at on a seaside pier to grab a cuddly toy, and like just that sort of intricate animation when it's done at such a tiny on a tiny scale is mind blowing.
Especially the little beads of sweat they put down Feathers' face. It's the detail. My favourite scene is when Gromit has been hiding in the bed and Feathers and Wallace go out and the bed goes up and slides down into that machine that makes breakfast. But the joke has already been preempted by showing Wallace what it's meant to do. So when Gromit falls down and the jam thing fires jam and you wait for the toast to pop up but it's empty and it just cuts to Gromit's face like, I knew it.
Breakfast is a big thing in these films as well, which is maybe another reason why I like them. Like all of the films have a scene of an elaborate breakfast scene, and they love showing Wallace drinking tea and making toast and having porridge and all that sort of stuff. And that's just nice, isn't it? Who doesn't love a breakfast scene?
And cheese. I was about to say
cheese. Yeah, it's all about cheese.
I know we'll get onto dream sequels later, but did you ever think they could be a sequel to this one, like the Revenge of Feathers McGraw kind of thing?
The character is so popular, and this is his only appearance, I think, in the films, unless he has a cameo in the other ones. But I think the character has lived on in the merchandise. And there aren't that many Wallace and Gromit films, really. There's 4 shorts and a few sort of like compilation-y things, and then the feature film, Curse of the Were-Rabbit. But they live large, because of the sort of pop cultural recognizability. And I think Feathers McGraw is one of the most recognizable characters. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Feathers has really gone away. But it would be nice to see him back on the big screen or a small screen, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there with like Kaiser Soze in like movie baddies. Right? That's like Feathers McGraw, Kaiser Soze. That's your baddie.
I think if I was doing a top 10 cinema bad guys list, I'd probably put him on, and I think everybody should put him on. Maybe we could convince someone at a posh magazine or a newspaper to run this list and put Feathers McGraw in the top 10.
Absolutely, bet higher than Darth Vader.
Yeah, definitely more sinister than Vader. For sure.
I think Vader's had multiple films to make his case. Feathers McGraw did this in 20 minutes. He's worked on us in 20 minutes. That's how much of an evil mastermind he is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I would have thought he would have a spin-off by now, because Shaun the Sheep is huge. And he was just in one of the films.
There's even a spin-off of Shaun the Sheep as well.
What's
there's Timmy, which is like a kids' TV show. Yeah.
Shaun the Sheep has had this
used to love
incredible
when he was
legacy.
little.
Like 2 feature films, a whole show, and then Timmy Time as well. Like it's I mean that's more successful than Frasier leaving Cheers. I think Shaun the Sheep leaving Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, it is amazing how it still stands up and they're still going, Wallace and Gromit. What do you think the future is? Do you think they're going to make another film at some point, hopefully, or?
It's so hard. What the one frustrating thing about Aardman is how long things take, and that's sort of like by design, because they make films in a very particular way. They only ever use their base in Bristol. Basically, they can only ever really produce one film at a time because they use the same studio space. I was lucky enough to have a visit for the Shaun the Sheep movie, and which was like real dream come true. Pinch me, oh my god, I'm going to the Dream Factory. More exciting than any other film I could ever have visited, because it meant I got to go to Aardman. And basically they have one studio space and they take it over with the production of that, and that's all they work on for however many years it takes. And it's amazing because like normally when you go to a film set, they'll shoot a scene and then they'll move the set and then they'll build another set in that same space. But with Aardman, because everything takes so long, they'll build like 20 sets and they'll separate them all with like black curtains. You don't have to worry about sound because it's stop motion animation and it's literally taking stills photos. But like you sort of go around and you talk to these guys on like stage 19 and you're like, what are you doing? It's like, well, we're doing a scene where Sean walks down a street, and that's all they're doing for 2 years. Like that's their
Whoa. Yeah. And Pirates is a great film. I don't think that gets the love from Aardman that it should do. I think the Pirates film is just genius.
Now, Pirates feels like there should have been sequels to, because that character, the
Yes.
pirate captain, voiced by Hugh Grant, is brilliant, and it's so easy with that's a great character. Put him in a different situation. I think that was one of their lowest grossing films, sadly, which is probably why it didn't get a sequel. Which is a real shame because it's beautiful. That was all they built miniatures for that one.
Hilarious.
And they were all so detailed, all the little costumes they're wearing, some really amazing jokes. So yeah, I think if Aardman could find a way to scale up, maybe we could get more adventures. But they're really picky about what they choose because it's such a time sink, and the whole company's in on it, really. And they're doing a sequel to Chicken Run, which we're going to see maybe next year or the year after.
Yes.
But I don't know if we're going to see more Wallace and Gromit. I think because Peter Sallis has sadly passed away now, I think they're sort of quite protective about, they don't want to recast him or something. So they're probably having a bit of a quandary.
Legacy, yeah.
There. Although I have been to, because based in Bristol, it's the most popular place in town. I did get to visit the Aardman offices as well, and in the lift at Aardman, they got Peter Sallis to record all of the floors. So like, welcome to level 1, welcome to level 2, but he says it in a very Wallace way, and his legacy lives on in the elevator at the Aardman office.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
Wow, that's a lovely touch.
Oh, look, Dave's nearly crying now.
Well, Wallace and Gromit means a lot to me because it reminds me of my nan, who was one of my favourite people ever. She seemed to really connect with it as well. And every year for Christmas, I would guarantee I would have a Wallace and Gromit something present.
Aww.
So I have mugs and figures and posters, I think, and anything. And she collected these tokens once from, I think it was Kellogg's or something, and she got me all these little Wallace and Gromit figures. She was amazing about it, and she would always get me like a Wallace and Gromit birthday card or Christmas card. It was nice to have, and I kind of miss that now. So
A simpler time.
I remember having a Gromit's head mug. It was like the shape of Gromit's head.
I had key rings. I had everything. I was obsessed with Wallace and Gromit. And I miss it. And I'm watching it the other day. I was like, I love it. I love it so much. I want more. But obviously, that might not happen. But I'm going to cry now. Let's move on. What has been your most disappointing sequel? So it's not your worst sequel ever, but it's the one you went in hot and you came out the most cold. So it doesn't have to be a bad film, but just it let you down. This is why I'm describing. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, this was a fun one to think about, and I chose a prequel. I don't know if that counts or if that's even allowed, but I went...
Is this your worst one? Is this the worst one or the most disappointing? Because there's the two quite different questions.
Oh, well...
Sorry.
I think...
This is a little sneaky question.
No, well, I think I originally messaged you that this was the worst one, but it actually probably is the most disappointing one.
Okay.
So yeah, Star Wars: A Phantom Menace. I was 11 when this film came out. I was the right age, so excited.
Yeah.
I'd never, maybe I had seen them. I think the original films were re-released in cinemas, but I knew the original films from VHS and never seen a new Star Wars at the cinema at that point, and there was so much hype around The Phantom Menace, and I had all of the toys from the original series, I knew all the stuff. I had Ewok toys and Luke Skywalker toys and watched the films, on and on and on and on and on. This was the first film I remember being really excited for and asking my dad, when's it coming out? Can we go on first day? And that was when I was like, before I was just like, what's on? Let's watch that, having no sense of release dates. But this one I knew was coming, and there were so many like promotional tie-ins with, things that we'd buy around the house,
everything.
Crisps and cereals and things. I remember like collecting Tazos and Walker's Crisps, which were a pretty pointless thing that you put into a book, little plastic discs with pictures on. But I remember collecting all of that and going really sort of heavy on it, and 11 years old to be disappointed by a big sort of sci-fi film is pretty, that's not a good sign, is it? If you alienate your core audience who really don't know what they're talking about. And I was just a bit bored with the film, and it was different. I didn't like how different it was to the original series. So I remember like thinking like, well, when's Luke Skywalker going to show up? Where's Darth Vader? What's going on? And all of there was no stormtroopers. Like all of the things I recognized from the original series wasn't here, so I think that's why I left disappointed. It wasn't what I was expecting.
No.
Does it still leave a bitter taste in your mouth now?
I keep every few years I sort of go and do a big Star Wars rewatch, and obviously the canon has got larger now because they keep making more films and TV, so the rewatch takes a bit longer. But during lockdown I did a rewatch when Disney Plus launched and all of the Star Wars stuff was on it, and I was like, oh, maybe now's the time. Maybe now, like 30 something, I'll appreciate the Phantom Menace. It's still a bit boring, isn't it? And the effects haven't held up super well. Is there anything good about it? I think I might appreciate it a bit more now because I've actually weirdly, for a film I didn't like very much, have seen it quite a lot because I still bought the Blu-ray and the DVD and probably had a VHS. And I sort of have been in that world for a while, but it doesn't get any better. I do like a lot of the Star Wars spin-off stuff, the sort of cartoon shows, the Clone Wars, and that's definitely made me appreciate this period in the Star Wars sort of mythology. But those films by George Lucas are probably the worst thing set in the sort of like prequel era. I think the CGI series, Clone Wars and Rebels, and is so much better. So
really good.
Yeah, they
really
keep
good,
drawing me back in. Like maybe now I'll like this film. Nothing really happens. I think that's the issue with it. There's a couple of fights, the pod race scenes, well staged.
Yeah, pod race scenes. Yeah, I was 18 when I watched it, and I had a very similar reaction to you. Essentially, is that I just came out and went, oh, okay. It wasn't it was just not what you expected. But actually, on rewatch, I think the next movie after it that makes this look a lot better.
Yeah,
if I watch them
that.
back now, and then you've got things like the Attack of the Clones. You're like, oh no, there was a way down from this.
Yeah, Hayden Christensen. I really don't like that relationship with Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen. No,
it's awful.
Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, but I do like in the show, Obi-Wan and Anakin are good when they're rendered in CGI, and the writing I think is a little bit better. And over the course of a series, you've got so much more time, for them to sort of get to see that relationship. And I do think in the films there's really no chemistry between the three leads, between Portman and Christensen and McGregor, and that's kind of a issue.
Yeah, it's a big issue. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, so for me, rewatching The Phantom Menace, I actually come out of it going, it's not actually that bad. It's better than I remember it. But I don't get the impression that you feel like that.
I think I keep wanting to give it a go, and it's like a constant disappointment in that respect. Like every couple of years, I'll rewatch all the films, and I'll okay, I'm going to give this one a go, and it's just not very good. And people often say Revenge of the Sith, the final part of this trilogy, is actually good, and there are some good scenes in it, but it's still a bad film. I think all of these George Lucas prequels, like they're all just distracted by the technology. I think George Lucas is so excited by what he can do now with the green screen work, with the extra models, with the CGI, with all that sort of stuff, and he is pioneering in that respect. But he's taken his eye off the ball with the script and with the actual human performances.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest problem with Phantom Menace is the human performances, and not just that, the human performances around working with CGI. They're not quite sure what they're looking at most of the time. Yeah,
that's true. It's proper like golf ball.
It was so early on. They were like, okay, let's just follow this green ball for a while, and then they got the heights wrong. And I know the boy gets a lot of abuse. The young actor,
Jake Lloyd,
he was awful.
Oh, I feel really bad for him. Like,
it was just thrown to the lions then. But
he was a little boy. And they were trying to make him act for things that weren't there, and I don't know. I just feel really, really bad. I don't think he's that bad. I know you do, Dave. I know you.
I go back to every time the making of these films are incredible, and they're casting other kids, and other kids are not great, but they're better than him. And George Lucas is going, let's go with that one. It's like the first boy they watched, and
I think I remember those documentaries. They're great on the DVD
They're
series.
so good.
So yeah, I bought all of them. Back when DVDs cost like 20 quid, I remember going to Woolworths and buying these as they came out, and I had all of them on DVD. I used to love those documentaries. So yes, the documentary about the making of the film is much better than the movie itself.
Even just Jar Jar Binks, who again got thrown under the bus a lot, when they're discussing that in the making of is hilarious, because they're like, if we get this right, this film's going to be incredible. I'm confused because they nowadays Ewan McGregor and the promotion of Obi-Wan were like, well, there's definitely an era that these are their Star Warses. And Sam, you said you're 11, so this should have been your Star Wars.
Should have been Ewan. I think Ewan is.
I haven't met a person that age yet that has said, yeah, I've liked this. So they must be talking about -10.
I think even younger,
maybe,
because there are people who actually grew up with the Clone Wars and then seeing these films as like afterwards. And I think if you go in Clone Wars first, maybe you care about the characters of Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme more than if you saw the films first. Because those shows do so much heavy lifting for those characters, and if you watch that show and then you see the movie, you're going in with 10, 20, 30 hours worth of relationship that the films don't give you. So I think that's maybe it's a younger audience who actually watched the cartoons first and then they saw the movies.
Yeah,
that's my posit to Ewan McGregor.
Yeah,
my 7-year-old son for a long time told me that Attack of the Clones was his favourite movie, and I was like, oh, I've failed hideously as a parent. But now,
what's his favourite film now?
Now it's the his favourite Star Wars movie is The Last Jedi now.
Okay, that's good. A good taste.
So, yeah. Okay. He's really into Kylo Ren. That's his big thing.
He's into bad guys. I don't know if that's worrying or not.
Yeah. He just likes all the bad guys, It's just,
He's like that Voldemort. He's great, isn't he?
No, but he doesn't like Voldemort. But he likes Slytherin. Like he wants to be in Slytherin in Harry Potter.
They're more exciting, though, aren't they? Like the villains, I guess for a child, often the villain characters, if they're done right, like they're just more charismatic. Like, I don't know, if you think about like the Disney Aladdin film, Aladdin's kind of a drip. He's boring, but Jafar's cool. You know, and Iago's fun.
Yeah,
and it's
true.
the same with Simba and Scar and the Lion King and all that sort of stuff. Like villains often, can make more of definitely more of an impression on someone.
Do you think that's where Phantom Menace went wrong? Because it didn't really have a villain. You had lots of people talking about tax blockades and politics and
trade
stuff.
wars.
And trade wars is pretty, and people in cloaks that you couldn't really see. And then, I mean, Darth Maul is an awesome design. I mean, he's incredible, and I think the end fight's really good. But he doesn't talk.
No, that's a flaw.
He just stands in the distance and goes grrr.
It's a flaw. He's basically a really prominent henchman, and I do think it's a shame that he isn't. Well, he got killed off and didn't come back for the other films. Obviously, he's come back later on, and I think he has a brief cameo in the Han Solo movie in live action again. But he's a great character, and I think now they realise he is a great character. But at the time, obviously, George wasn't concerned with that because they went really with the marketing as well. Like Darth Maul was in everything, and there was like Darth Maul pizzas and Darth Maul this and that and stuff. And when you're watching the film, you're like, oh, that was it? He has 2 scenes and then he dies? He says one line? Like, what's going on? He's not because he was positioned as being the new Darth Vader. Look at he's cool. He's got 2 lightsabers. And look at this great.
Well, when that happens, that is cool,
it's so
right?
Cool.
Though when he goes whoa.
So he's left a really his appearance, I think, has like left a lasting legacy. But it's a shame there was no character really that went with that. And the fighting's cool. Ray Park's great. Martial arts person who can do great fighting, but you're right. It should have had a Darth Vader. They should have had an iconic villain that stayed throughout the series. The Emperor's not a great primary villain, like he's good behind the scenes. Yet another flaw with these films.
Yeah, because I mean, essentially, the Emperor's a politician, and if you're a grown-up, you understand that politicians are villains. But when you're a kid, you're like, well, he can't be the baddie. He's really boring. He just talks about like drone armies and droids and like trade federations.
They're awful. The droid army is super annoying.
Yeah, the banter
rubbish.
they gave the droids, so annoying, and like they're obviously not a challenge for our protagonists. So it's just like knocking over bowling pins, like some more droids. At least the stormtroopers in the original series, like they couldn't hit anything, but they were a bit more threatening and they looked cooler. And they were scary, they had that that sort of like voice changer sort of thing, made them not feel human. Whereas they made the banter with the droids was not fun. George Lucas cannot write jokes.
No.
Please stop.
You can't write a script. If you were showing someone Star Wars now, where would you start?
Good.
So someone who's never seen Star Wars, where would you start?
Good question. I have watched them through in the sort of chronological order of the story, and it doesn't work, I don't think. I think the way they were released, because even if, no matter what George says, when the films were released, that was as much as anybody knew who was like writing the script and all sorts of stuff. And you have to watch the prequels as prequels, because they don't work as like this is what you should watch first. And then actually with the new ones, the sort of J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson ones, they work better as well if you have a bit of distance between the original series. So you have a little detour to the past with those George Lucas prequels, and then you come back for the legacy sequels, and because everything is so long ago in that world, there's sort of like a real time between the original series there. So I would do it in order of release, and I will go down with that ship.
I'm with you. That's how I showed them to my wife. She'd never seen Star Wars. I was like, well, strap in. I'll show you the good ones. And then when it got to Phantom Menace, I was like, here's some wine. Here's some alcohol.
A really foolish
and then these aren't great.
endeavor I did once for I do a podcast with Picturehouse Cinemas, and when Force Awakens came out 2015, we did do a podcast where me and my co-host watched all 6 sort of original films in a day, and we got quite delirious by the time we got to the end of the thing. Like we had quite a long chat about the first film we recorded, and when we got to the 6th film, we were like, everyone dies, horrible. just like so past it, recording that at 11 o'clock at night. But that was a fun experiment to do, and I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. Definitely have some gaps between these movies.
Another little question before the dream question: is there a sequel that surprised you that was better than the previous one? So it can be 2, but it can also be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, I think a few have come across, just to sort of quickly name drop a couple of things. Like, I don't like the original Top Gun film very much. I wasn't the right age for it when it came out, and when I did finally watch it, I was like, okay, sure, whatever. But the new Top Gun is so good, Top Gun Maverick, like one of the best films I've seen this year, and one of the best films I've seen for many years. I've seen it twice at the cinema. It's still on, so I might go and see it again. I really, really enjoy that film, and I think they did such a good job of taking the modern day Tom Cruise persona from the Mission Impossible films with all the real life death-defying stunts, and turned it into this really neat sort of video game of a narrative. But I really enjoyed it. So that was a surprise, because I went in thinking, oh god, another Top Gun. I'm really not fussed about this franchise. Why are we doing a legacy sequel to that particular movie? But the series that keeps surprising me, because it's mostly sequels now, is the Fast and Furious films, where I didn't really care for the original. I just sort of, it came and went when I was, 20 years ago when that first film came out, and they're stealing DVD players from the back of a truck. But now they're 9 films in, and there's a spin-off, and there's more on the way, and I'm so invested in that series. And I don't know when. I think with Fast 5, I got really into it. So that was the 5th installment.
5's when it kicked up again.
Yeah.
There and that.
5's
They change it, don't they? They change the rules. They turn them into the characters totally changed. The scale increases. They're way more cinematic. They bring The Rock in, who's just oozing with charisma, and yeah, I really got invested in the family with Fast 5.
Oh god.
And then I've hung around for all the other ones. I enjoyed 6. I really liked 7. 8 was fine. 9 was a good time. Hobbs and Shaw was a film, and yeah.
I like Hobbs and Shaw. I think it's all right.
Hobbs and Shaw is a film I watch in an aeroplane.
Oh, great plane film.
That's great plane.
Or like a Saturday afternoon film. It's like.
So yeah, I think
you don't have to concentrate too much. You could be like cooking and stuff, or doing something else.
I think that's the joy of that whole series, though. Like they're I love 90s action movies, like the films of Tony Scott, and all of those sort of great things that we got, Cliffhanger and stuff like that. And we don't really get action films like that now. They're basically superhero films, but Fast and Furious sort of operates outside of that. And I mean, they are almost superhero-like now in these films. They're so silly, but they are just like pure, honest-to-God action films. There's a villain in every one, and they do a thing. The cars now sort of play second fiddle, I think, to all of the other stuff. But yeah, I do like those films, and it's a big soap opera of a series. So yeah, that's a weird rule of thumb, I guess, where I got invested with the 5th film in the franchise.
I think that's true for a lot of people, because the fifth the fifth really pivoted the franchise around, didn't it? It really kind of changed it up. I mean, the first one's basically Point Break with cars instead of surfboards, and then 2 just is forgettable, and then 3 I like 3. I like Tokyo Drift, and then 4 goes back to being a bit forgettable again. But yeah, you're right. 5 just goes like, fine, Mission Impossible has happened, let's make this a thing.
I'd love to have been in that meeting. I'm just sitting down and going, okay, what can we do for the 5th one? And whoever said bank heist, like, I was like, okay, that's a good, okay, we'll put that down on the board. What else can we do? It just kept, we're throwing more mental ideas. I'm like, okay, we'll do all of these. This
everything sticks.
It's
a bit. They become a bit James Bond like as well, with like the globe trotting element. Like this one's going to be in Tokyo, this one's going to be in Rio, this one's going to be in London. And like they do make a big thing about filming. The last one, there was a weird scene in Edinburgh. Not where I associate like a fast car movie to be set, but it's real. It's nice to see them actually shooting on location and taking the jamboree around different countries and different towns.
Yeah, that is true. I feel like they got to a point where they're like, there's no idea is a bad idea.
Yeah,
The franchise
absolutely.
might as well be called No Idea is a Bad Idea.
And it worries me of where the 10 part 1 and 2 are going to go, because I didn't really enjoy 9.
They've been to space. They've brought down a submarine with cars. Like, where do they go now?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Have they done stuff in the desert driving? Like, I know they've driven like to, there's a shot in a 7 when they drive to Abu Dhabi or Dubai or wherever it is.
Yeah.
But
You want the Mad Max Fury Road of Fast and Furious.
yes,
I think they could do that.
that'd be amazing.
All driving. I don't know. I'm sort of like, they're just like these, like, I'm not like counting down the days for another Fast and Furious, but when one comes out, I will go day one. That's that sort of Friday night thing I was talking. Like I'll go day
I'm
one.
afraid, Sam. I don't know if you know it. But you are counting down the days. You're like, I'll be there day one.
Whenever day one is, though, like if day one was tomorrow, I'll hop out. I can happily live my life until that moment comes, and then I'll get the beacon that'll light the bat signal, and I'll be at the biggest screen possible, the local IMAX to see that film.
Yeah, they have to be seen.
I like how the bat signal would just be like Vin Diesel's bald head.
Yeah.
Like, just shine a torch from behind his head.
I don't know. It's also like Vin Diesel's persona's changed so much with these films. Like he's not like, because he's not very interesting as a human. Like he doesn't really talk about him. He manages to stay out of like all of the sort of celebrity gossip sort of stuff, and he really only makes these films and voices Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy these days. But he's got this really like weird, like mythical sort of persona, and like when he does press now, it's like you're talking to the most important man in the world. Like it's just weird how he's like Tom Cruise but he's nowhere near as good as Tom Cruise. And he hasn't got the same film history as Tom Cruise, but he's in that same space because he represents one of the most popular franchises in the world. And these films do take money. What I like as well is there's this universal appeal where like people have just got on board with it now. People aren't so sniffy like, oh, it's just about cars or whatever. It's like, oh, they're a good time. They're a good time on the big screen.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel. The man is a mystery to me. I think his next step is a cult leader. He's gonna move, like, get a load of people to move somewhere with him, and he's just gonna live out happily in the mountains, talking about peace and love,
Playing D&D.
playing D&D.
Well, it's like he doesn't really like have a costume for the films. It's just what he wears all the time. He always wears a white vest and sunglasses and shoes with massive platforms on, and that's just what he sort of transcended that. Like he's not really playing the character. It's just Vin now in different guys. It's like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise in everything. In Top Gun Maverick, he's Tom Cruise.
What is your dream sequel? I'm looking forward to this one. What is your dream sequel?
So my dream sequel, and I think the listeners can agree with me, is that we were underserved by only having one installment in the Nancy Meyers film, The Holiday. There's only one adventure with those characters, and I really genuinely think there's so much more to do. There's so much unfinished business in the world of The Holiday. So I would love Nancy Meyers to go back to Surrey and to LA and, to get all the gang back together, Kate Winslet, Jude Law, Jack Black, Cameron Diaz, and give us another outing, with these weirdly mismatched couples and all through the guise of a house share or a house swap, sort of romantic situation. I think it's what the world's asking for. It's 16 years now since The Holiday came out, and we've seen so many other undeserving films get sequels in that time. So if we could revisit, those guys, I think their stars have never been brighter in terms of the cast. Kate Winslet and Jude Law, Jack Black, and Cameron Diaz is retired, but she could come back for a Holiday 2. I want The Holiday Part 2.
I think a Netflix film's already beating you to the. She's coming back.
Oh shit!
One film with Jamie Foxx apparently, yeah. But so it's called The Holiday. Would you pick another holiday like Easter or Thanksgiving?
Summer.
I'm trying to summer holiday.
Summer holidays.
I do like it when
It's normally when you have a holiday.
I like it when I think it has to. The core structure of The Holiday is that couples meet whilst doing a house swap in an unexpected way. So I think there has to be a house swap, and I think there has to be sort of an unexpected romance as part of the that sort of swap. I think you could have a really nice time making it a really sort of awkward, sweaty reason to get the characters back together again, to sort of do the house swap thing. And I do think you can have fun with the title. I like films where it isn't just The Holiday 2. It should be a summer holiday or another holiday or something. We could, with the screenwriter Nancy Myers, maybe we can work up some ideas on the title there. But yeah, I'd like a fun title, and I'd like the most really sort of 9-point sort of awkward reason as to why these characters get back together again, and end up having to sort of basically have another house swap. And let's see what sort of japes ensue. There was a couple of relationships at the end of the first film. So Cameron Diaz and Jude Law get together. They're trying to make their relationship work long distance. I don't think that's going to last. And also Kate Winslet and Jack Black get together just out of convenience. He's literally the only other guy there, and they have no chemistry really in the film. So I think I'd like them all to realize that they're not right for each other, but maybe they've stayed in Christmas card contact, and for some reason 16 years later they have to get together again. But then you could bring in new characters for them to actually pair off with, and they find their real sweethearts 15 years later.
Oh, nice. I really like slightly dialed back Jack Black in this movie, because he's not full on Jack Black, is he? He's kind of straight man Jack Black, basically.
Yeah, he's not the Tenacious D.
And I really like that.
He's actually acting, and he's quite sweet. Really, he's a little bit sickly in places, but he's good. He's a good time. There's a really nice scene in the first film, the only so far film in the Holiday franchise, where a load of old timers come around and they're having a Hanukkah party at Kate Winslet's house, and it's just Jack Black is so charming, acting opposite Eli Wallach in that scene. I'd like more of that, please.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like that scene too.
I feel like in your head, every time you talk about this, you try and call it the Nancy Myers holiday trilogy.
Well, yeah, she's up there with Francis Ford Coppola. This should be the Godfather trilogy. It's her magnum opus.
Yeah.
I think Nancy Myers is a bit like Aardman, is someone who hasn't made enough films, and the reason she hasn't made enough films is because she takes so much time to make a movie. She writes her own scripts. She writes original screenplays. She doesn't do franchise films or superhero movies or anything. So already she's sort of swimming upstream with wanting to do an original romantic comedy there. And even though she is, I think, still the most successful female director of all time in terms of box office, she still struggles to get her films made. Her last film was The Intern in 2015, and she hasn't really had anything since then. There's talk that she is now writing a new film and is doing something, but she takes her time between movies there. So yeah, maybe if she had a franchise, it would be easier for her to get funding each time. Just doing another Holiday, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Was it love at first sight for you, this film? Is this your favourite Christmas film?
I think it's one of my favourite films of all time, genuinely, because I love Christmas films. A lot of my favourite films of all time are Christmas films. Muppet Christmas Carol, It's a Wonderful Life, classics. But this one, I obviously came to a bit later in life because it was released in 2006, and I was like, oh, this has got the magic of It's a Wonderful Life for me. It's charming, it's funny, it's I love a rom-com. We haven't had many. I mean, we have had festive rom-coms, but they're all kind of bad. Like Four Christmases. This is actually a good Christmas rom-com. even though Christmas doesn't take place in the day, it's set around the Christmas holidays. It doesn't take place in the film. There isn't a Christmas Day scene in the holiday. It's kind of weird.
No.
But yeah, it feels festive. So it sort of gets me on and I do think it's quite charming. It makes me cry, it makes me laugh. Any film that can make me sort of emote must be doing something right. So yeah, it stuck with me. I saw it at the cinema in 2006. I was like, oh, that was actually better than expected. And I've just stayed with it, and I've watched it every year. It's gone into Christmas rotation. So now I've watched it at least 16 times, although realistically way more, because we do a podcast about the holiday called The Holiday Season, so I've watched it a lot for that. So yeah, I'm just sort of in the corner championing this movie. This really like heavily seen film, but also like very forgotten movie for 11 months of the year.
Yeah. I don't feel like it gets the credit it deserves. I really enjoy this movie, and I watch it every Christmas. Yeah. It's in my list of like Christmas movies that I watch every year, and yeah, I really enjoy it. And it's not like, I mean, Nancy Meyers has written a sequel before. She's written Father of the Bride too, hasn't she? So there's scope. There could be a sequel.
Yeah, and she's even done Father of the Bride Part 3 during lockdown, a Zoom film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's got a bit of a cast of characters who she likes to, like cast of actors she likes to work with. So I wonder if she did a sequel to The Holiday. Like she's probably close to retiring. She's, like she must be in her 70s now. So I think she could sort of cash in all of her chips, get Steve Martin in, get Diane Keaton in, get Robert De Niro in, like all these people that she's said in interviews, like she loves working. She's really close friends with Diane Keaton. She's worked with De Niro in The Intern, and he came back in Father of the Bride Part 3 as a new character in that universe. So I think she could sort of get other people from the Nancy Meyers cinematic universe to come in and prop the cast up and make it a properly A-list cast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love that. Like Rich, I've watched this a lot because it's my wife's, I think, her favourite Christmas film, and she's from Canada. And I think before she moved over here in 2012, 2013, this was her image of England, that cottage with the winter and stuff. And when she got here, it's like, well, that's not like it at all. But
no. Also, there's nowhere that cottage is in Surrey.
No, well, the cottage is in Surrey, but it isn't
real.
It
really?
Fuck you, Rich.
Real. They built it on a farm. Okay. So, I mean, one of our episodes we did was with the location manager of the movie, and he talked about how for about a year he was tasked with finding this like idyllic cottage that was in Nancy Meyers' head that she'd sort of written doesn't exist.
Near a train station.
And and he went everywhere. He went to Scotland, went to Cornwall, went to Wales, like all around sort of like the West Country, Surrey, and just couldn't find, something that would be suitable. So they built one in a field down in Shear.
Oh, right, okay. I take it all back.
Is it still there, or they knocked it down?
No, it was temporary. It was there for like a year or so because they had to let the garden bed in. So they did build it and let the sort of foliage grow around it. But it got taken down, and there's not even... There used to be, I think, like a laminated sign on a fence and like the holiday cottage from the holiday was here, but that's gone now. They need to have like a permanent, like a blue plaque situation, I think.
Yeah,
because it is on it's on a walking path, so, and it's a lovely part of the world, so good for tourists, I think. There is a pub in the town, which is a pub used in the film, and there is a sign in the pub that says Jude Law sat in this chair whilst filming Nancy Meyers' holiday. And so like that, there is like a reason to go if you do want to have a pilgrimage in the UK for the film The Holiday, but you can't see the real cottage, sadly.
You've interviewed Jude Law, right?
Yeah, last Christmas.
Was one of your questions, when is The Holiday 2 happening?
We did talk about a sequel. I don't know if we did it on the podcast, though. I had this weird sort of thing last year where I met Jude Law a few times, and eventually I plucked up the courage to say, oh, by the way, I love The Holiday. And he was like, what? Why? And then we, just because no one ever talks to him about that particular film, I got the sense, like Mr. Ripley comes up a lot and stuff. So he was like, why? And we had a conversation about why. And we did talk about a sequel, and he said he would love to do a sequel and, just get back together with those guys. He said they all had a nice time working together, all the actors, Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet, Jack Black. So I think the cast are willing. It's whether Nancy Meyers has got a story or if she wants to actually, spend time writing this or rather, a new film. But I don't know.
Yeah.
If Jude Law says yes, surely it will happen, right?
Yeah. Oh, fingers crossed for you, Sam. I'm really hoping this one pulls off for you.
I hope so. I hope so. I think
I
don't
would be
know,
there for it,
like
definitely.
more people are watching it every year, so like it's building this momentum, over a period of years. So maybe Nancy Myers will sort of feel the attention, and be like, okay, now it's time,
And it does still hold up, right? It does, like,
It does.
It's not
It is magical Christmas film.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's unbelievable, but yet believable at the same time, kind of thing. It gets the balance really, really nice.
I think it holds up as well due to the Hans Zimmer score, and his stock has never been higher now. So if Hans Zimmer said the next film I'm doing is a score for The Holiday 2, all the Dune heads would come in, all of the Batman fans would be on it. I think now that's what Hans Zimmer should use his clout to work on this one.
Nice.
I remember watching it going, I want to make trailers for a living. That sounds like a great job. I could happily do that.
That would be amazing.
Looks like a good time. So yeah, all being well, let's everybody wish The Holiday 2 into being.
And those were Sam Clements' Unequal Sequels. What very nice choices, Dave.
Oh man, that was really pleasant. We spoke about really nice films.
We did.
Like Wallace and Gromit and
The Holiday
and Star Wars.
Not so much Phantom Menace. Yeah.
It's always interesting to talk about Phantom Menace, but is it a sequel? Is it not? Is it another Star Wars film? Yes, it's another Star Wars film. Yes, I know it's not. It's the start of a blah, 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 blah.
Anyway.
I don't care.
Anyway, we talked about it. Just get over it.
It's too late now.
It's too late. We've done it. It's not great.
It's not the first time we've spoken about
Also,
it either, so
I don't think it's the worst one of the
it's not.
first that prequel trilogy, and I don't think it's the worst one of the whole Star Wars, movie universe. Yeah,
Skylord of shitness is whatever it's called. Is the worst one. Makes me feel physically angry when I talk about it.
Skylord of shitness. What the hell's that?
We all know which one I'm talking about. Okay.
You're talking about Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
I love how Rise of Skywalker's turned to Skylord of shitness.
I really hate that film.
Oh dear, man.
Anyway, best Wallace and Gromit. Wrong trousers.
Lovely choice.
I know it's only half an hour long, but it is a sequel. It is a short film.
Hey,
and
if you're good enough, you're long enough. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. And in that film, they do so many things well.
They do.
Like the Penguin and Gromit don't say a word, and yet they say so much.
They've got more chemistry than Chris Pratt and every other leading lady he's ever been in the film with. So and they don't talk to each other.
Yeah, that is also true. Yeah. Wow, that penguin's good. But Wallace and Gromit, I think about it, like I said in the episode, I think of my nan. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
It brings back good memories, and I will be watching them all again at Christmas, all of them. So I can't wait for that.
The Holiday, talking of Christmas.
Wow.
It's a really nice movie.
It's a good Christmas film.
It is.
It is a Christmas film me and my wife both enjoy, because there's only a very few when we both agree.
Yeah.
And The Holiday is one of those films. I think it's great. I like all the cast. It does romanticize England a little
Just
bit.
a tad.
But I like that. I like that it snows in that world.
Yeah.
And,
I think it romanticizes Hollywood a bit as well, right?
probably, yeah. Everyone's in nice houses and meeting nice neighbours, and you meet Jack Black and he makes you laugh and stuff like that. And I was surprised to hear that house is not a real house. That's the biggest outcome of that whole conversation I had with Sam. I swore it was real.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a real house. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew? Well, I think it was a lovely episode. And if you thought it was a lovely episode and you'd like to go back to listen to more lovely episodes, then you're in luck, because we've got 3 other series. Well, 3.5, because we're definitely halfway through the 4th series now for you to go back and listen to. Check them all out. We've got more brilliant guests. We've also got loads of extra episodes. We can hear Dave and I rant about movies we didn't like, or wax lyrical about movies we did like. We do that quite a lot. Go back, hit the little subscribe button, hit the automatic download button, and we will drop into your little pod player of choice every single time there's a new episode. You'll never, ever miss out on us again. if you really like us and you really like what you're hearing, there is an opportunity for you to hear a little bit more. So we have a subscription-only service on Another Slice. Go to anotherslice.com/unequal sequel. There are sequels to all of our interview episodes, and we've planned some incredibly special Christmas-based content coming up as well. We're going to do some very special things coming up around there, and you'll get loads of extra content out of our interview seasons as well. So do make sure you have a look on there. It's only $2.99 a month. It's not very much, but we understand that times are tough. So if you can't afford the $2.99, don't worry. We've got a competition coming where you can win a subscription. So keep an eye out for that too. We will be announcing it on social media. And if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter @unequal sequel and on Instagram also at Unequal Sequel. And you can always drop us an email to unequalsequel@hotmail.com. You can tell us whether you like the movies from today's episode or you didn't like them. Anything we receive from you, we'll read out in our kind of monthly roundup episode at the end of the month. Whilst you're there, if you want to give us a little like and give us a little heart and 5 stars, even write us out a rating, we would love you forever.
Wow. We've really extended that a bit now, and
I know, right? It's so long. I feel like I'm talking for about an hour.
Thank you everyone for listening. We really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying the content as much as we enjoyed recording it. By the time we're speaking, we've nearly finished everyone. We've got one more to record. Exciting.
It is exciting.
I've got nothing else to say, Rich. Have you got anything else to say?
Nope, that's me.
Okay, it's a bye-die from me. Bye-die. Apparently that's Bangladeshi. Again, if it's wrong, the internet is telling me these things. It's bye from me. And it's a bye from him.
Bye!
We will see you next week. It's getting closer to Christmas. It's getting darker. It's getting colder. It's getting more miserable. But let's all be happy. Why shall we be happy, Rich? One word answer.
Christmas.
There you go.
No?
Yeah, it can be. We will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
One word we expect.
I don't know. I
right, okay.
can't see what you're going to say. You'd be like, cake.
Yeah.